Hello and welcome to another of our best days at work. And today we've got Melanie Steel along to answer the question, what was your best day at work and why? So Mel has an absolutely amazing CV. She's a interim transformation director, but she's worked for Royal Sun Alliance, she's worked for Ministry of Defence, she worked for Unilever, and she was the HR director of Number 10 Downing Street. So Mel, it's lovely to see you. Thank you ever so much for doing this. And can I ask, what was your best day at work and why?
Oh, thanks, Richard, for having me along. I actually thought this was quite a hard question to answer when I step back to think about it. But I think the one that kind of sticks in my mind most recently, I guess, is being part of the team that put the night services on for the Arriva Rail London. Um, and the reason why I think for that was it was a huge project, as you can imagine, to try and take daytime services and switch them to operate at night. We knew that our client TfL had tried to do this previously, and it had taken them about 2 years to get all the different bits of the jigsaw together. We didn't have 2 years to do it.
How long did
We
you have?
well, we really needed to pull something out the hat, if I'm honest. So we probably had about 9 months at most to make it go live. And reputationally, obviously, it's a really big thing to for the client who was TfL to market, and then obviously for the operator ARL to get right. So it involved so many different bits of a jigsaw, as I like to call it, when you're trying to do change and transformation. I was actively involved in the piece, which was about working with the unions to get an agreement to get the drivers to agree to work additional shifts at night, which brings all different connotations. So there was a big strategy and negotiation plan around that. And then obviously we had all the other different parts of it, of having access to the stations, having the trains available, health and safety, shared platforms, the list goes on and on and on. So a really complex, but probably covered, there was a person from every department within the business that was part of the team, because it touched so many different areas. And there was lots of reasons why I was proud to be part of that team. One, because we made it happen. So it's always great when we say it's going to happen. Two, it's known that it's very difficult to negotiate with trade unions for rail to change terms and conditions of service. So to be able to negotiate a deal with the drivers and them turn up to actually make it go live on day one and continuously is always a success, because you never know if things might fall apart at the last minute. For our managing director and for our client TfL, it was a very positive news story of stuff where in rail there was a lot that was less positive. So it was good to change up the headlines. And for me, the purpose bit was the thing that makes it one of the most enjoyable days at work, where we went live, because the line runs through some of the more deprived areas of London as a city, and many people are on low income work and have to work nights to put food on the table. And so you have a lot of people who work in hospitals and cleaners and security. And before we were able to put the night services on, they had to rely on other forms of transport or less safe environments as well, or means rather. And so for me to do something that was obviously contractually part of what we'd agreed to do when the operator took over the deal was one thing, but actually I went out at the weekend to midnight to go to travel as a woman on my own, like the line. After the razzmatazz, I hasten to add, when the MD and everyone went out, when all the cameras and everything were there. So I wanted to go out to see what did it actually feel like, and to meet some of the passengers. And look, there was plenty of party people out there as well at 1 o'clock in the morning, making use of getting safe passage home, which is great, and it is for them as well. But actually, you know, the overwhelming talking to people who were using it as a method to get home safely or to go to work really felt like all of that hard work was really worth it, because it was something so fundamental as transportation in a city was going to make a huge difference to a number of people. So that's why
Lovely.
I think it felt such a good day.
Yeah, excellent. Real impact. Very nice. I like that a lot, Mel. Thank you. And what about your worst day? Going to the other extreme.
Oh God. Well, I think if you've worked in HR, there's probably been a few. And if you're as old as me, there's definitely been a few. And then it's like, which ones can I share? Which you know, we don't have the luxury of Chatham House rules with these kind of things. So it was like, and I want to be honest, because I think otherwise it kind of, you know, when someone says, oh, this didn't quite work, you think, oh, was that really that bad? But I think for me, one of the hardest days was when leadership wanted to do something which ethically I thought and believed was unfair. And I foolishly thought if I shared my professional opinion, that they would listen to that, not like it, but would listen to that and not necessarily follow it, but would professionally respect it. And it didn't go down so well. And it was a really difficult moment where your value system is in a place of your career and your values, and where do you place what's more important. And I'd always joked as an HRD, you know, well, you know, you hope you never get to the point where you're in this situation of, is it X or Y? And what was really interesting about the situation was I was clear that I couldn't support it from a professional perspective and from an ethical stance. However, I also recognize I am a professional at a senior level, and my decision is not final. And therefore, it was up to you know, the CEO to be able to make that decision as the most senior person on the board, and could disregard my professional opinion. And that didn't go down so well either, because they really wanted me to sign it off. And thereby, in terms of learnings, there was a catalogue then of learnings that came from that for me. One is my value system. I could not move away from it, even though I knew it would do me personal harm, probably in the future, particularly to my career. And it's a bit like a sliding doors moment. I always think of, if I had supported it, it probably would have done wonders for my career. But my value system just didn't allow me to move away from that. So I certainly knew my values were being tested, and I couldn't move away from that. And I couldn't compromise. I was willing to compromise on the fact that I didn't have the last say on it, but I was definitely not going to put my signature to something which I could not professionally stand by. And the fairness bit, I realized, I obviously being in the role of an HR director, you know, fairness kind of runs through you, but I probably hadn't anticipated how strong that did. And I realized a very valuable lesson that sometimes you can't want something for a business more than they want it for themselves.
Okay, that's a very good way of putting it. There's a lot of people going to be watching this and nodding, I think, furiously.
And it was the biggest learning bit. And if there's anything that, when I now work with other HRDs or, senior HR folk, and they say, I'm in this, hopefully never as challenging as that situation that I was in personally. And it was very personal. And the senior folk around me that probably should have have my back, I would say, in that sense, didn't, and were like encouraging me, look, just park your values to one side and just do it, because it's not worth the hassle. And I felt like, well, actually, you should be probably more in this space than I am in. But parking that to a side, when I speak to other HR directors, I hear them getting into that space of they just can't do this. And I will always say, take a breath. You can't want this more than they want it for themselves. And at the end of the day, you can only give your professional expertise in that space, but ultimately the business has to make that judgment.
Yeah, got you. Excellent. Thank you ever so much, Mel. That's fantastic. Very powerful stuff, and appreciate you sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.